Man, he really thinks this is funny.
Most people would say that Pong was the very first video game ever, and that is true to a point. It wasn't the 1972 release on the Atari, but rather a similar tennis game made in 1958 by physicist William Higginbotham. I think that's right. He called it Tennis for Two, and it was presented during an open house at Brookhaven National Laboratory. But we've come a long way with games since then, providing sock-melting realism like no other. Yet, some games can be a little too realistic for some people. I'm talking about the violence in video games, which has pretty much been around ever since we could display color. It's not that big of a deal until people start using it as an outlet for some events like, say, I don't know, school shootings, terrorist attacks, murders, bikes? But these fingers aren't just being pointed around all willy-nilly for no reason. Some games are actually pretty grotesque. Just take a look at Mortal Kombat, which was considered horribly violent by all means back when it was released in 1992. It even helped pave the path to create the ESRB rating system. And then, 2 years later, came Doom.
Oh man!
The basic rundown of this one is that it was hundreds of times more violent than Mortal Kombat, with depictions of satanic cultism all throughout the game. But to further sink in that nail, this is probably one of the only games that has a real influence on a controversial event. Harris, one of the two who committed the Columbine massacre, and made his own handful of levels for the game, one of which resembled his school. He even wrote it in his journal about the events.
Oh, it'll just be like playing Doom!
But enough history, class. Throw out that textbook and maybe yourself too. It's time to get into what we really came here for. The violence. The blood. What it's doing to our poor children. And what it's doing is, well, a lot of things actually. So let's get into that a little bit. It's been proven in many different studies that video games are beneficial for you, acting as a more natural and far less addictive stimulant. It can also improve reflexes, coordination, and social skills. This does not mean you should go home today and play Call of Duty all night, because doing exactly that is actually very bad. Too much of games like this can damage the hippocampus, which is essentially where memories are stored. This can lead to Alzheimer's, depression, and schizophrenia.
But what about that guns?
Right. Call of Duty has the guns, and also a very controversial scene in one of the games. Looking at you, Modern Warfare 2. Now, not every game is Call of Duty, or something even close to what those games are. Different types of games do different things for the brain. Puzzle games, like perhaps Antichamber, can act as a brain gain, helping to slow the natural aging of the brain and give you a higher IQ. Then, there's games that are crafted to help people just chill out and relax. Walking simulators are a good example of this. All you do is walk. That's it. Trust me, it's more enjoyable than it sounds. There's always the freedom of going somewhere random and hecking around there to possibly make a friend or two. Sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it can give you PTSD for the rest of your life like it did for me. But I still had a good time in the process, and that's all that really mattered.
Okay, that's cool and all, but still, what about the guns?
I'm getting to it. So, the violence. It's all over the place. How do we solve it? Answer is, we don't. Time already took care of that. Long story short, the violence really isn't a big deal. It's more of a blame tool than anything. Just make sure to keep an eye on the type of stuff your children are playing, and to have an assortment of different games to switch between regularly. That is a tongue twister. Why is that word, out of all words, a tongue twister? Regularly.